My husband's dying wish was for me never to visit his family's farm. But after he died, his brothers tried to steal my inheritance. They thought I was just a grieving widow, helpless and alone. They had no idea my husband spent his last 3 years building a secret war room, leaving me a perfect plan to destroy them from beyond the grave. Never go to the farm, Catherine. Promise me. Those words, spoken with a strange, hard intensity, were one of the few real demands my husband Joshua ever made. In 24 years of marriage, he was a man of gentle requests, not stark commands. I had always respected his wishes. I never pushed. I never pried. Even when my curiosity gnawed at me, I let the mystery of his Canadian childhood remain his alone. The farm was a closed door, a part of his past he had locked away, and I loved him too much to try and force it open. But now Joshua was gone. A sudden, massive heart attack had stolen him from me, from our life, from the world. No one saw it coming. There were no warnings. One moment he was here, the next he was a memory. After nearly a quarter of a century as his wife, I was a widow at 52. I was left with a daughter whose grief was as sharp and bitter as my own, and a hollow space in my chest where certainty used to live. Mrs. Mitchell? The voice of Joshua's attorney, Mr. Winters, was soft, but it pulled me from the fog of my thoughts. I blinked, the polished mahogany of his desk coming into focus. 2 weeks had passed since the funeral. The raw, screaming phase of grief had faded into a dull, constant ache. Now the finality of death was being reduced to a stack of paperwork, signatures on dotted lines, the legal dismantling of a life we had built together. There's one more item, he said, pushing a small ornate box across the desk toward me. I opened it. Inside, nestled on a bed of black velvet, lay an antique brass key. It was attached to a simple maple leaf keychain. Beside it was a sealed envelope. My name was written on the front in Joshua's precise, familiar handwriting. The sight of it made my throat tighten. "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I turned the heavy key over in my palm. Felt old, important. "Your husband purchased a property in Alberta, Canada, 3 years ago," Mr. Winters explained, adjusting his glasses. "According to his instructions, you were only to be informed of its existence after his passing." My mind struggled to process the information. Property in Canada? Joshua didn't own any other property. We had our home, the one we'd lived in for 20 years. That was it. "The deed has been transferred to your name," he continued. "All property taxes are paid in full for the next 5 years. It's called Maple Creek Farm," he said, and the name hit me like a physical blow. Apparently, it was his childhood home. The deed shows it changed hands several times before he repurchased it. The farm, the one place he had forbidden me from ever visiting, the one subject that could make my gentle husband's face harden into a mask of stone. Why would he buy back a place that caused him so much pain? And why would he keep it a secret from me? "Mrs. Mitchell, there's something else," Mr. Winters said, his voice dropping slightly. "The property has become quite valuable recently. There have already been inquiries about its availability." "Valuable? It's a farm," I said, confused. "Yes, but according to my information, significant oil deposits were discovered in the region about 18 months ago. Your husband declined multiple offers from various energy companies." My head was spinning. Oil? Secret property purchases? We had lived a comfortable life. Joshua was a successful engineer. I was a high school English teacher. But we were hardly wealthy. How could he have afforded to buy a farm? And why would he hide it from me? With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. "My dearest Catherine," the letter began. Asterisk, if you're reading this, then I've left you too soon. I'm sorry. There's so much I should have told you, but I couldn't bring myself to face it. The farm is yours now. I've spent the last 3 years transforming it from the broken place of my childhood into something beautiful, something worthy of you. I know I made you promise never to go there. I'm releasing you from that promise. In fact, I'm asking you to go once before you decide what to do with it. On the desk in the main house, you'll find a laptop. The password is the date we met, followed by your maiden name. I love you, Cat, more than you'll ever know. Joshua. Asterisk. I clutched the letter to my chest. The tears I had been holding back finally came, blurring the world around me. Even from beyond the grave, my husband was full of surprises. A deep, aching love mixed with a new, burning curiosity. "I need to see this place," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Of course," Mr. Winters nodded. "But I should warn you, Joshua's family in Canada has contested the will. His brothers, they claim he was not mentally competent when he repurchased the property." "That's ridiculous," I said, anger cutting through my grief. Joshua was the most rational, clear-headed person I've ever known. Nevertheless, they've filed legal objections. Given the property's newfound value, It might get complicated. I tucked the key into my pocket. A strange, unfamiliar determination began to settle over me. It felt like a piece of Joshua's own quiet strength had been transferred to me. "I'm going to Canada, Mr. Winters," I said, my voice firm. Today. 48 hours later I was there. A hastily booked flight and a long solitary drive through the vast Alberta countryside had brought me here. I stood before imposing wooden gates. In wrought iron, the words Maple Creek Farm were arched over the top. Beyond them, a property far larger and more magnificent than I could have ever imagined stretched out before me. Rolling hills, stands of maple trees, their leaves turning a brilliant gold in the autumn sun. And in the distance, a large farmhouse and several outbuildings, all freshly painted and perfectly maintained. This was no broken-down family farm. This was an estate. The key Joshua had left me turned smoothly in the gate's lock. As I drove up the winding gravel driveway, my heart pounded. It was a chaotic mix of anticipation and apprehension. What secrets had my husband kept here? What part of himself had he hidden from me for all these years? The farmhouse was a stunning two-story structure. It had a wide, welcoming porch and large windows that seemed to drink in the sunlight. Nothing about it suggested the pain Joshua had always associated with his childhood home. This place hadn't just been restored. It had been completely renovated. It had been loved. It had been reborn. My hands shook as I inserted the same key into the front door. The lock clicked. The door swung open. I stepped across the threshold into my husband's secret world, and what I saw made me gasp. My knees went weak. I gripped the doorframe for support, my breath catching in my throat. The entryway opened into a soaring great room with exposed wooden beams and a massive stone fireplace. But it wasn't the architecture that stole my breath. It was the horses. They were everywhere. Not real ones, but art. Exquisite paintings of horses in full gallop across endless fields. Detailed sculptures capture their raw power and delicate grace. Stunning photographs of magnificent breeds, framed in simple black wood. My lifelong passion, the one indulgence Joshua had always supported but never quite seemed to understand, surrounded me. He had built a private gallery, a museum dedicated to my greatest love. And there, on a beautiful wooden desk by the window, overlooking endless green pastures, sat a silver laptop. A single, perfect red rose was laid across its closed lid. Before I could take another step, the crunch of tires on gravel announced another arrival. I looked through the front window. A large black SUV was pulling up behind my rental car. 3 men emerged. They all had the unmistakable Mitchell features that Joshua had carried. Tall frames, dark hair, strong jawlines. The Mitchell brothers had arrived, and from the grim, determined expressions on their faces, I knew they hadn't come to welcome me to Canada. The 3 men approached the house with the confident stride of people who believed they owned the ground they walked on. My heart began to race. I quickly closed and locked the front door. Through a side window I watched them pause on the porch. They conferred among themselves, their voices low and urgent. Then the oldest, a silver-haired version of Joshua with harder, colder eyes, knocked sharply on the door. "Mrs. Mitchell? We know you're in there. We should talk." His voice carried the same Canadian accent that had always softened Joshua's speech when he was tired or upset. But in this man's mouth, the accent was harsh, demanding. I remained silent. I backed away from the door. Joshua's warnings about his family had always been vague but emphatic. "Stay away from them, Kat." Now, faced with their sudden, unwelcome arrival, my instincts screamed at me to be cautious. The knocking came again, louder this time, more insistent. "Catherine, I'm Robert Mitchell, Joshua's older brother. These are our brothers Alan and David. We're here about the farm." Of course they were. They weren't here to talk about Joshua. They weren't here to meet the wife their brother had loved for 24 years. They were here about the money, the suddenly valuable property. My eyes darted to the laptop on the desk. Whatever answers I needed were more likely to be found there, not with the strangers on my porch. I ignored the increasingly aggressive knocking. I walked to the desk, my movements deliberate. I opened the computer and entered the password. 05151998 Mitchell. The date we met. My maiden name. The screen came to life, opening directly to a folder labeled "For Catherine." Inside were hundreds of video files. Each one was named with a date. The first was dated 2 weeks ago, the day after his funeral. The last one was dated a full year into the future. My fingers trembled as I clicked on the first file. Joshua's face filled the screen. He wasn't the thin, pale version of himself from his final months. He was healthy and vibrant. He was smiling directly into the camera. That crooked, wonderful grin that had always made my heart skip a beat. "Hello, Kat. he said. If you're watching this, then I'm gone, and you've come to the farm despite my years of making you promise not to. He chuckled softly. I should have known you wouldn't be able to resist, especially after Winters told you about it. A lump formed in my throat. Even now he knew me so well. I've made a video for every day of your first year without me, he continued. 1 year of me keeping you company while you grieve. 1 year of explaining everything I should have told you while I was alive. He looked down for a moment. Then his gaze met the camera again, his expression full of determination. Starting with why I bought back the farm I swore I'd never set foot on again. The knocking outside had stopped. Through the window I could see the men returning to their vehicle. They were retrieving documents from a briefcase, conferring with stern expressions on their faces. Joshua's voice pulled my attention back to the screen. 3 years ago I was diagnosed with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It's a heart condition I inherited from my father. The doctors gave me 2 to 5 years. I chose not to tell you or Jenna. I didn't want your pity, and I didn't want our final years to be overshadowed by death. His eyes softened. I wanted to live fully with you, Kat, until the very end. Don't slowly die in front of you. A wave of shock and anger surged through me. He had hidden his diagnosis. He had made these monumental decisions without me. He had denied me the chance to prepare, to cherish our final moments knowingly. I know you're angry right now, he said as if he could read my thoughts. You have every right to be, but I hope in time, you'll understand that I made this choice out of love, not deception. The men outside were now on their phones, pacing the gravel driveway with the frustrated energy of thwarted entitlement. When I got my diagnosis, Joshua went on, I decided to use whatever time I had left to create something meaningful for you. You always loved horses. You always talked about having land someday, a place where you could raise them. So I found the last place anyone would expect me to go. The farm I fled when I was 18, vowing never to return. He leaned closer to the camera. What my brothers don't know, he said, a new hardness in his voice, is that I legally bought this farm from our father before he died. The old man was broke. He'd spent years on failed schemes, drinking away the family money. He sold it to me for a fraction of its worth, desperate for cash. And he swore me to secrecy from my brothers. They still thought they would inherit it someday. This explained their legal challenge. They believed they had a right to the property that Joshua had legitimately purchased years ago. The farm was in ruins when I bought it, Kat, he said, just like it was when I was a kid. But this time I had the resources to transform. Every business trip I took in the last 3 years I was actually here. I was overseeing renovations. I was building something for you. Outside, the brothers had approached the door again. This time, Robert held a document pressed against the window for me to see. It appeared to be some court order. My brothers will come for it, Joshua continued in the video, his expression hardening. They never wanted this farm until last year when the oil was discovered. Suddenly, the worthless property they'd mocked me for buying was valuable. They'll try everything to take it from you. One of the brothers was on the phone again. His expression was triumphant as he ended the call. In the bottom drawer of this desk, Joshua said, there is a blue folder. As every legal document you need. The farm is unquestionably yours. I made sure of it. Joshua's face softened again. But Kat, whether you keep it or sell it is entirely your choice. I built this place for you. I filled it with beauty for you, but I don't want it to become a burden. A vehicle was coming up the driveway. A police cruiser. Royal Canadian mounted police markings were on the side. The brothers watched its approach with satisfied, smug expressions. One last thing, Joshua said. In the stables you'll find 6 horses. All the breeds you've admired over the years. The staff I've hired will continue caring for them whether you're here or not. They're my last gift to you, along with the means to enjoy them. The video ended. It froze on Joshua's smiling face. At the exact moment, the knocking resumed at the door. It was more authoritative this time. Mrs. Mitchell, RCMP, we need you to open the door, please. With a deep breath, I closed the laptop. I retrieved the blue folder from the desk drawer. I went to face whatever came next. As I reached for the door handle, my phone rang. It was Jenna, our daughter, calling from home. I hesitated, then answered. Jenna, now's not a good time. Mom. Her voice was tight with anger. Why didn't you tell me about Dad's farm? Or the will? His brothers just called me. They're offering a fair settlement if I help them contest the will. What the hell is going on? So they had already gotten to my daughter. They were trying to turn her against me. The realization ignited something fierce and protective inside me. They weren't just coming after me. They were trying to manipulate my grieving daughter. I'll explain everything later, I promised, watching the police officer exchange words with the brothers. But Jenna, don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. These men are not our friends. Mom, if there's money involved. This isn't about money, I interrupted, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. This is about what your father wanted. Please just trust me on this. After a moment of silence, she sighed. Fine. But you have to call me back as soon as you can. I hung up and opened the door. I faced a young RCMP officer flanked by the 3 Mitchell men. Their expressions ranged from smug to openly hostile. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm Constable Wilson, the officer said. These gentlemen have a court order requesting an inspection of the property as part of an ongoing estate dispute. I smiled calmly. I channeled the strength Joshua had always admired in me. Of course, Constable. But first I think you should see these. I held out the blue folder containing Joshua's meticulous documentation. My husband had anticipated this exact situation. The oldest brother, Robert, stepped forward with a dismissive wave of his hand. Family property disputes are complicated, Constable. My sister-in-law is understandably emotional and confused. Actually, I interrupted, my voice steady and clear. I'm neither emotional nor confused. I'm a widow standing on property that legally belongs to me, facing 3 strangers who happen to share my late husband's DNA. I turned to the officer. And I would appreciate it if you'd review these documents before allowing anyone onto my property. The constable took the folder. His expression was neutral as he began to examine the content. The Mitchell brothers exchanged glances. Their confidence was visibly wavering for the first time. I thought of Joshua's video, of the secret he had kept to spare Jenna and me unnecessary pain, of the magnificent gift he had created in his final years. Whatever game his brothers were playing, I was determined not to lose the last tangible expression of my husband's love without a fight. The constable looked up from the documents. His expression had changed. These appear to be in order, Mrs. Mitchell. A clear deed transfer, properly notarized statements, even certified bank records of the original purchase. He turned to the brothers. Gentlemen, I don't see any grounds for forcing an inspection today. This appears to be a matter for the civil courts. Robert's face flushed with anger. This is outrageous. That woman has no right. That woman, I interjected calmly, is Joshua Mitchell's wife, and I have every right to be here. As the brothers reluctantly retreated to their vehicle, followed by the apologetic constable, I felt a strange sense of both loss and discovery. The husband I thought I knew completely had kept secrets, some painful, some breathtakingly beautiful. Now I faced a choice. I could retreat to the safety of my familiar life, or I could step fully into this unexpected legacy and the battle that came with it. I closed the door. I walked back to the desk and reopened the laptop. Tomorrow's video awaits. And with it, more pieces of the man I had loved and was only now beginning to understand fully. Outside, the Mitchell brothers might have lost this skirmish, but their expressions as they drove away made one thing abundantly clear. The war for Maple Creek Farm had only just begun. I spent that night in the farmhouse. Joshua's farmhouse. No, our farmhouse. I was surrounded by the evidence of his secret labor of love. Sleep was impossible. My mind was a whirlwind of revelations. Joshua's hidden illness, the transformed farm, his brother's greed, and there are hundreds of video messages waiting for me on the laptop. At dawn, I decided to explore the property. The main house was a masterpiece. He had blended original farmhouse elements with modern comforts. Every room reflected my taste. The library was filled with first editions of my favorite novels. The sunroom overlooked the eastern pastures. A perfect spot for morning coffee. It was all for me. But it was the stables that genuinely took my breath away. As Joshua had promised in his video, 6 magnificent horses occupied the spotless stalls. An Andalusian, a Frisian, 2 quarter horses, a thoroughbred, and a gentle Appaloosa that nickered softly when I approached. My heart ached with a sweet, painful love. "Good morning, ma'am." The voice startled me. A man in his early 60s emerged from the tack room. He was wiping his hands on a cloth. "I'm Ellis. Your husband hired me to manage the stables." "Catherine Mitchell," I replied, extending my hand, "though I suspect you already knew that." He nodded, a gentle smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. "Mr. Mitchell spoke of you often during his visits, said you had a natural way with horses that he never managed to acquire. You knew my husband well?" Ellis hesitated. "As well as he allowed anyone to know him, I suppose. He was here every month for the past 3 years. He oversaw everything personally. He never delegated a decision if he could make it himself." That sounded exactly like Joshua. Methodical, hands-on, attentive to every single detail. "The black Frisian there," Ellis continued, nodding toward a magnificent stallion watching us with intelligent eyes. That's Midnight. Your husband spent months tracking him down specifically. Said he reminded him of a horse in a painting you love. My heart clenched. The Stubbs painting of a black horse against a stormy sky. I had admired it at a museum 20 years ago, and Joshua had remembered. Did he? I hesitated, unsure how to ask. Did my husband ever mention his health to you? A shadow crossed Ellis's weathered face. Not directly, but these last 6 months he pushed harder. He worked longer hours. He added more features to the property. He was like a man racing against a clock only he could see. The confirmation stung, but it also explained the driven quality I had sensed in Joshua during his final month. I had attributed it to work stress. I never imagined he was creating all this while knowing his time was limited. His brothers were here yesterday, I said, overseeing Ellis's reaction. His expression hardened. They've been circling since the oil was discovered on neighboring properties, suddenly very interested in the family farm they hadn't visited in decades. What can you tell me about them? Ellis secured a stall door before answering. Robert's the oldest, runs some investment firm in Toronto. He always acted like he was doing Joshua a favor just by acknowledging him. Alan's the middle one, a lawyer, a slick talker, and David's the youngest. He followed Robert into finance, always in his shadow. And their relationship with Joshua? Strain doesn't begin to cover it. From what I gathered, they tormented him as a child. They were city boys who visited the farm reluctantly. They looked down on him for staying to help your father-in-law run the place. Ellis shook his head. When Joshua returned to buy the property, they mocked him for wasting money on worthless land, right up until the Petersons struck oil 2 properties over. This aligned with the fragments Joshua had shared over the years. His difficult childhood. He escaped to the United States for college. His reluctance to ever discuss his Canadian family. They'll be back, I said, more to myself than to Ellis. Count on it. He nodded grimly. But Mr. Mitchell prepared for that. He was always 3 steps ahead. Back at the house, I forced myself to eat something before opening the laptop for today's video. Joshua appeared on screen. He was seated in what I now recognized as the farm's library. Good morning, Kat. I hope you slept well in our new home. He smiled, that crooked smile I missed with a physical intensity. Today, I want to show you something special. The camera moved as he carried it through the house. He went down a hallway I hadn't explored yet and stopped at a locked door. This room is for you alone, he said. The key is in the top drawer of the bedside table, the antique silver one with the horse engraving. I paused the video. I went to the main bedroom and found the key exactly where he said it would be. I retraced Joshua's path from the video and located the door. It was unassuming at the end of the east wing. The key turned smoothly in the lock. I pushed the door open and gasped. It was a fully equipped art studio. The large corner room was bathed in perfect northern light from floor-to-ceiling windows. There were easels, canvases, paints, brushes, everything a painter could desire, all arranged with loving precision. I hadn't painted in 20 years. After college, I had set aside my artistic aspirations. I needed to teach to help support us while Joshua built his engineering career to raise Jenna. Over the years, someday, had become a distant dream. Then, eventually, it became a bittersweet memory of a path not taken. The video continued. Joshua's voice pulled me back to the laptop I had carried with me. You gave up so much for us, Kat. Your painting was the first sacrifice. You never complained, but I always promised myself I'd give it back to you someday. Tears blurred my vision as I surveyed the studio, taking in the professional-grade supplies. The inspiration books are stacked neatly on shelves. The north-facing windows provided perfect, consistent light for painting. There's one more thing, Joshua continued. Check the cabinet below the window seat. I crossed to the cushioned window seat that overlooked the eastern pasture, now golden in the morning light. Below it, built into the wall, was a cabinet I might have missed. Inside lay a flat, archival box. With trembling hands I lifted the lid, and then I sank to my knees in shock. My paintings, dozens of them, all the work I had created in college, the pieces I thought had been lost in our many moves over the years. Joshua had preserved them. He had protected them. He had kept them safe for 2 decades, until he could return them to me in this perfect space. On top lay a small canvas I recognized immediately. It was my final project before graduation. A self-portrait of a young woman looking forward, her eyes alight with possibilities. Joshua had asked to keep it the day I completed it. Tucked beside it was a handwritten note in his precise script. She's still in there, Kat, the woman who painted with such passion and vision. I've given you the space. The rest is up to you. I clutched the note to my chest, overwhelmed by love and loss in equal measure. Joshua had seen me. He had truly seen me in ways I hadn't allowed myself to be seen in years. The sound of vehicles on the gravel driveway pulled me from this emotional moment. I moved to the studio window. I watched two cars approach, the now familiar black SUV of the Mitchell brothers, and behind it, a sleek silver Mercedes I recognized instantly. Jenna had arrived, and from the way she emerged from her car and strode confidently toward the brothers, it was clear they had already begun their work on her. My daughter, Joshua's daughter, with her father's dark hair and my stubborn chin, was smiling and shaking hands with the uncles she had never met. Whatever fragile peace I had found in Joshua's posthumous gifts evaporated. I was now facing a new, terrifying complication. The battle for Maple Creek Farm had just become significantly more personal. I watched from the window as Jenna exchanged friendly greetings with her uncles. Her body language was open, receptive. At 27, our daughter had her father's analytical mind and my determination, but she lacked Joshua's patience and my caution. She was quick to form opinions and slow to revise them. My phone buzzed with a text from her. Arrived with Uncle Robert and the others. Coming in now. We need to talk. Uncle Robert. They had known each other for less than a day, and she was already claiming a family connection. I tucked Joshua's note into my pocket, locked the studio behind me and went to face this new alliance. They entered without knocking. Jenna used the familiarity of a daughter's privilege. The brothers followed in her wake like wolves behind an unwitting guide. Mom. Jenna embraced me briefly then stepped back. Her eyes darted around the impressive entryway. This place is unbelievable. Why didn't Dad ever tell us about it? Before I could answer, Robert stepped forward. His resemblance to Joshua was painfully sharp in the morning light. Catherine, I believe we got off on the wrong foot yesterday. We were surprised by your sudden appearance, just as you were surprised by ours. His conciliatory tone didn't match the calculating look in his eyes. Beside him, Alan and David maintained carefully neutral expressions. Alan was clutching a leather portfolio. It undoubtedly contained legal documents. Jenna, I said, ignoring Robert completely. I thought we agreed you wouldn't engage with your father's brothers until we'd had a chance to talk. She flushed slightly. They called again this morning with a very reasonable proposal. I thought I should at least hear them out in person. Her chin lifted defiantly. It was the same expression she had worn as a teenager when challenging her curfew. Besides, they're my family too. Family you didn't know existed until yesterday, I reminded her gently. Only because Dad kept them from us, she countered. Just like he kept this whole place secret. Don't you think that's strange? What else was he hiding? The question hit uncomfortably close to the revelations in Joshua's videos. He had hidden his illness, his property purchase, and his reclamation of my artistic dreams. But his reasons had been born of love, not deception. Your father had complicated relationships with his brothers, I said carefully. He had his reasons for the distance he maintained. Robert gave a dismissive wave. Ancient history. Siblings clash, especially in difficult families like ours. What matters now is moving forward together. Exactly, Jenna agreed. She was earnest, believing she was being perfectly reasonable. Uncle Robert has explained everything. This farm has been in the Mitchell family for generations. Dad bought it from Grandpa Mitchell, but it was always meant to be shared among the brothers eventually. I suppressed a sigh. They had been working on her for less than a day, and she was already parroting their version of events. And the sudden interest in the property wouldn't have anything to do with the oil discovery? I asked mildly. Alan stepped forward, opening his portfolio. The mineral rights situation is just one aspect of a complex legal picture. We've prepared a fair settlement offer that honors Joshua's wishes while acknowledging the Mitchell family's historic claim to the property. We're prepared to be very generous, Robert added, placing a grandfatherly hand on Jenna's shoulder. A 1/3 share to you, Catherine, 1/3 to Jenna, and 1/3 split among us brothers. Everyone wins. Jenna looked at me expectantly. She was clearly already sold on the proposal. It makes sense, Mom. We don't need this huge place. We could sell it all, walk away with millions, and Dad's family stays intact. Your father specifically left this property to me, I said, meeting Robert's gaze steadily. Not to you. Not to his brothers. Out of confusion and misplaced sentiment, Robert countered smoothly. Joshua wasn't thinking clearly in his final years. A flash of anger burned through me. My husband was of perfectly sound mind until the day he died. Then why all the secrecy? David spoke for the first time. His voice was softer than his brother's but no less pointed. Why hide the property purchase from his wife and daughter? Why the elaborate arrangements with the lawyer? These aren't the actions of a man reasoning. I thought of the videos, the renovated farm and the art studio. Each element had been meticulously planned as a final gift. Nothing about it suggested confusion or impaired judgment. Mom, Jenna said, her voice gentler now. I know this is hard. Dad left both of us, and now we're discovering all these secrets. But this proposal makes financial sense. We'd both be set for life. The door opened behind them and Ellis appeared. His weathered face was concerned. Everything all right, Mrs. Mitchell? I saw the vehicles arrive. The brothers turned, clearly annoyed by the interruption. Robert's eyes narrowed. This is a family matter. Ellis is my employee, I said firmly. He's welcome in my home. Actually, Alan interjected, his employment status is among the disputed assets, pending resolution of our legal claim. Ellis stood his ground. Mr. Mitchell hired me personally. He made me promise to look after the place and Mrs. Mitchell if anything happened to him. We'll be reviewing all staff appointments, Robert said dismissively. I had heard enough. I think it's time for you to leave, I said, looking pointedly at the brothers. Then I softened my gaze when it reached Jenna. All of you, except you of course. You're always welcome to stay. You're not even considering their offer? Jenna asked, incredulous. I'll review any written proposal with my own attorney, I replied, but I will not be pressured in my own home. Robert's mask of conciliation slipped, revealing the hard businessman beneath. This property is worth tens of millions with the oil rights. We can do this amicably or we can make things very difficult. Is that a threat? I asked with more calmness than I felt. A reality check, he corrected. You're a school teacher from Minnesota facing a legal battle against opponents with significantly more resources. Joshua may have meant well, but he placed you in an untenable position. I thought of the blue folder with its meticulous documentation. I thought of the videos showing Joshua's clear-headed planning. I thought of the transformed property that represented his final act of love. I believe my husband knew exactly what he was doing, I said quietly. Now please leave. Jenna, you're welcome to stay for lunch if you'd like. She looked torn. She glanced between me and her newly discovered uncles. I think I'll go with them for now. We have more to discuss. He kissed my cheek quickly. Think about the offer, Mom. Please. I watched them leave. A hollow feeling expanded in my chest. In just 24 hours, my daughter had been pulled into the orbit of men Joshua had spent his life avoiding. Whatever they were telling her was having an effect. I could see it in her receptive posture, her quick adoption of their perspective. Ellis waited until their vehicles had disappeared down the driveway before speaking. Mrs. Mitchell, there's something you should know. Something your husband asked me not to mention unless it was absolutely necessary. I turned to him, mentally exhausted but forcing myself to focus. What is it? It's about the true extent of the property. And what's really hidden here. He gestured toward the stables. We should walk. Some things shouldn't be discussed indoors where walls might have ears. As I followed him across the yard, the morning sun illuminated the beautiful farm my husband had created in secret. Whatever revelation awaited me, I was sure of one thing. Joshua had anticipated this battle. Perhaps he had even anticipated Jenna's vulnerability to his brother's manipulation. The question was whether he had prepared me enough to win a fight I never even knew was coming. Ellis led me past the main stables toward a weathered barn I hadn't explored yet. Unlike the other pristine, renovated structures, this building retained its original rustic character. It looked old, unimportant, deliberately unimproved. Your husband was a careful man, Ellis said, producing an old iron key. After his brother's first visit last year, he became even more cautious. They visited before? Joshua never mentioned that. Ellis nodded grimly, showed up unannounced. It was right after they caught wind of the oil discovery on neighboring properties. Your husband was here, supervising construction of the art studio. They didn't recognize him at first. He'd grown a beard during his treatment. The casual mention of Joshua's treatment sent a fresh wave of pain through me. While I had been obliviously teaching high school literature in Minnesota, my husband had been here, sick, creating this sanctuary for me while fending off his predatory brothers. What happened? He observed them from a distance. Then he left without revealing himself. That night he made changes to the property plans. Ellis unlocked the barn door. Starting with this, the door swung open to reveal an ordinary-looking barn interior. Hay bales, old farm equipment, dust motes dancing in the beams of sunlight filtering through gaps in the walls. Ellis moved confidently to the back corner. He shifted several large hay bales, exposing a trapdoor set into the dirt floor. Your husband installed this entrance last winter. The workers who built it thought they were just building a root cellar. He pulled the heavy door upward, revealing a sturdy wooden staircase descending into darkness. "After you, Mrs. Mitchell." Curiosity overcame my apprehension. I followed Ellis down the stairs. At the bottom he flipped a switch. Lights flickered on, revealing a concrete tunnel stretching forward into the earth. "What is this place?" "Your husband called it insurance. I call it genius." Ellis gestured for me to follow as he walked down the tunnel. "The Mitchell brothers think they know the full extent of this property and its value. They don't." The tunnel extended for perhaps 50 yards before opening into a large climate-controlled concrete room. It was filled with filing cabinets, a desk with computer equipment, and walls covered with maps and documents. "Welcome to Joshua's war room," Ellis said, a hint of pride in his voice. Everything he collected about his brothers, their business dealings, and the true value of Maple Creek Farm is in here. I moved to the nearest wall. A detailed survey map was pinned up, showing not only the farm but also the surrounding properties for miles. Red markings indicated oil deposit locations, accompanied by handwritten notes on depth, quality, and extraction challenges. "I don't understand," I said, turning to Ellis. "Joshua knew about the oil." "Not at first. He bought this place to renovate for you. Pure and simple. But about 18 months ago, when the Petersons' land showed oil, he hired geologists to survey Maple Creek secretly." Ellis pointed to the map. "They found something unexpected. The largest deposit isn't under the eastern section where everyone's drilling. It's here, under the western acres that look worthless." I studied the map more carefully. I noted the concentration of red markings on the rugged, apparently unusable portion of the property that stretched into the foothills. It was the very land Robert hadn't even bothered to mention in his proposed division. "The oil company surveys missed it because the formation is unusual," Ellis continued. "It's deeper and shaped differently than they expected. Your husband verified it with 3 independent experts, swearing them all to secrecy. So the property is even more valuable than his brothers realized. Exponentially. But that's not all." Ellis moved to a filing cabinet and withdrew a thick folder. Joshua documented decades of questionable business practices by all 3 of his brothers. Tax evasion, insider trading, misappropriation of client funds. There's enough evidence in here to ruin them all professionally if it ever came to light. I leafed through the meticulous documentation. I recognized Joshua's thorough approach to problem solving. There were email printouts, financial records, and sworn statements from former employees. He had built an airtight case against his brothers. Why would he collect all this? "Protection," Ellis said. He sat at the desk, gesturing for me to take the other chair. "He knew they'd come after the farm once he was gone. He wanted you to have leverage." I thought of Robert's smug confidence, Alan's legal maneuvering. Their quick work turned Jenna against me. "He anticipated everything." "Not everything," Ellis said quietly. "He didn't expect them to get to your daughter so quickly." The reminder of Jenna's betrayal stung. "They're manipulating her with half-truths and promises of wealth," I said. "And they're playing on her grief," Ellis added. "She lost her father. Suddenly they're offering a connection to him through shared blood and history. That's a powerful draw for a young woman who is mourning her dad." He was right. Jenna had always been a daddy's girl. She shared Joshua's analytical mind and love of puzzles. His death had left her adrift, vulnerable to anyone offering a connection to him. "What do I do now?" I asked, half to myself. "That depends on what you want," Ellis replied. "You could sell everything. The property, the oil rights, the whole package, and walk away wealthy. But you might be forever estranged from your daughter. You could fight the brothers legally using this leverage. That might win you the battle, but it would worsen the family wounds. Or what? You could do what your husband always did. Think 3 steps ahead, and find the path that no one expects." I considered this as I continued to examine the war room. On the desk sat a framed photograph I had never seen before. It was Joshua as a teenager. He was standing proudly beside a magnificent chestnut horse, his face alight with an innocent joy I had rarely glimpsed in the man I married. "That's Phoenix," Ellis said, noticing my focus on the photo. "Your husband's horse when he was a boy. It was the only bright spot in his childhood here, from what he told me. His brothers sold the animal while Joshua was away at school, just to hurt him." Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Joshua's unwavering support of my love for horses, despite having no personal interest in them himself. The 6 magnificent animals in the stable weren't just a gift for me. They were his way of reclaiming something precious that his brothers had stolen from him. I picked up the photograph. A plan began to form in my mind. "Ellis, does the laptop with Joshua's videos work down here?" He nodded. "There's a secure Wi-Fi network throughout the entire property. Your husband made sure of it." "Good. I need to watch the next few videos ahead of schedule. Then I need you to arrange a meeting for me." "With whom?" "First with my daughter. Alone. Away from her uncles. Then with my attorney. And finally, I glanced at the wall of evidence Joshua had compiled against his brothers. I think I'd like to speak with those oil company representatives who've been making offers on the property. Alice smiled for the first time since we had entered the hidden bunker. You're planning something your husband would approve of. I'm planning something worthy of the man who loved me enough to create all this, I corrected, a new determination steadying my voice. And I'm going to need your help. Whatever you need, Alice promised. Your husband saved my life once years ago. He gave me this job when no one else would take a chance on an ex-con trying to rebuild his life. I owe him everything, and by extension I owe you. This was yet another side of Joshua I hadn't known. His quiet generosity, extending beyond our immediate family, changed the lives of people I had never even heard about. As we left the bunker, carefully concealing the entrance again, I felt a strange sense of connection to my late husband. It wasn't the grief that had dominated the past weeks. It was a partnership that somehow continued beyond death. He had left me not just property and material security. He had left me the tools and the knowledge to forge my own path forward. The Mitchell brothers believed they were facing a naive widow who was out of her depth. They had no idea what was coming. Over the next 48 hours I barely slept. I was fueled by determination and the growing clarity of my plan. I watched a week's worth of Joshua's videos in a single night. Each one revealed more of his strategy and the depth of his foresight. They'll try to divide and conquer, he warned in one recording, as if speaking directly to my current situation. Robert will be the friendly face, Alan the legal threat, David the silent observer. And they'll target Jenna. She's their easiest path to destabilizing your position. In another video he walked through the western section of the property, the supposedly worthless acres his brothers had deliberately excluded from their proposal. This land looks like nothing, Kat. Scrubby hills, rocky terrain, difficult access. That's why it's perfect. No one looks closely at what appears valueless. Armed with Joshua's insights and my own growing understanding of what I face, I arranged to meet Jenna. I chose a small cafe in the nearest town 20 miles from the farm. It was neutral territory, away from the Mitchell brothers' influence and the emotional pull of Joshua's carefully crafted sanctuary. She arrived 15 minutes late. Her defensive posture was already in place before she even sat down. I can't stay long. Uncle Robert is taking me to meet the family attorney this afternoon. Uncle Robert, I repeated mildly. You've become quite close in 3 days. She flushed. They've been nothing but kind and welcoming, which is more than I can say for you. You're treating them like enemies instead of Dad's family. I sipped my coffee, choosing my next words carefully. Do you remember that art history course you took your sophomore year? The professor who talked about perspective. How does where you stand completely change what you see? What does that have to do with anything? You've only heard their perspective on this situation. I'm asking you to consider that there might be another view. Your father's. Dad's dead, she said bluntly, pain flashing across her features, and he obviously didn't trust either of us enough to tell us about this place while he was alive. I reached into my bag and withdrew a tablet. Actually, he left something for both of us. What is that? Your father made videos, Jenna. Hundreds of them. Messages to guide us after he was gone. I turned the tablet to face her. I queued up the specific video Joshua had labeled for Jenna when she needs it. Her face paled. He made videos. He knew he was dying, I said softly, finally sharing the truth. He was diagnosed 3 years ago with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. He chose not to tell us. He wanted to spare us from watching him decline. That's impossible, he would have told me. But uncertainty had crept into her voice. Watch the video, Jenna. Hear it from him. With trembling fingers she pressed play. Joshua's face appeared healthy and vibrant. His eyes crinkled with that smile that was so uniquely his. Hello, my brilliant girl. If you're watching this, then I'm gone. And knowing you, you're probably angry about all the secrets I kept. He chuckled softly. You never did like being kept in the dark about anything, even as a toddler. Tears welled in Jenna's eyes as her father continued. I should have told you I was sick. I should have given you time to prepare, to ask all those questions you're so good at asking. But I was selfish. I wanted our last years together to be normal, not overshadowed by my diagnosis. I hope someday you'll forgive me for that choice. Joshua shifted, leaning closer to the camera. But there's something else you need to know. Something about my brothers that I've never shared with you. Our estrangement wasn't some petty family squabble. Jenna, they embezzled my portion of our father's estate when I was 19. They used my name on fraudulent documents while I was away at college. When I discovered it and threatened to expose them, they threatened to implicate me as a willing participant. Jenna's hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes never left the screen. I left Canada. Joshua's voice was grim. I changed my name slightly from Jonathan to Joshua, and I started over in Minnesota. I met your mother, built a life, raised you. It was more than enough. His expression hardened, but my brothers never changed. Whatever they're telling you now, remember this. They've wanted control of the family property for decades. Not out of sentiment but pure greed. And they'll use anyone, including my daughter, to get it. The video ended, freezing on Joshua's concerned face. Jenna sat motionless. Tears streamed silently down her cheeks. He was protecting us, she whispered finally. All this time, from more than just his illness. Yes, I confirmed gently. Your uncles aren't the family connection they're pretending to be. They're opportunists who see you as their easiest path to what they want. She wiped her tears. Anger replaced grief in her expression. They've been lying to me, haven't they? About everything. Not everything. The farm is worth millions. That part is true. But they haven't told you about the western section they conveniently excluded from their proposal. Or the true extent of the oil deposits there. Understanding dawned in her eyes. They're trying to cheat us. Us. I repeated, a flicker of hope igniting within me. Does that mean you're back on my side? Mom, I never left your side. She looked down ashamed. I wanted to feel connected to Dad through his family. They had stories about him as a kid, photos I'd never seen. I understand, I assured her, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. Grief makes us vulnerable in ways we can't anticipate. But now we need to be smarter than they are. Together. Jenna straightened. Her expression shifted from one of devastation to one of determination. It was a look so much like her father's that my heart ached. What's the plan? I smiled, feeling a genuine sense of confidence for the first time since this ordeal began. First, we're meeting my attorney this evening. Not the family attorney your uncles want to use, but someone recommended by Joshua's lawyer in Minnesota. Then tomorrow we have an appointment with Western Plains Energy, the oil company. Why? Because knowledge is leverage. And right now we know something your uncles don't. We know exactly where the oil is and how much there really is. I showed her the geological surveys from Joshua's war room. They think they're dealing with an uninformed widow and a naive niece. It's time to show them exactly who they're really facing. For the first time since Joshua's death, Jenna laughed. It was a sound of genuine amusement. Dad always said you were the smartest person he'd ever met. He said that underneath that quiet high school teacher was a tactical genius who could outthink anyone if she was properly motivated. Did he really say that? Asked surprised. All the time. She smiled, wiping away the last of her tears. He also said that the biggest mistake anyone could make was underestimating Catherine Mitchell. As we left the cafe together, I felt a shift in the dynamic of this battle. The Mitchell brothers had unwittingly united us rather than dividing us. They had no idea that their apparent early success with Jenna had only set the stage for their ultimate defeat. Later that evening, with Jenna beside me, I laid out my complete plan to the attorney Joshua had selected for this exact scenario. His expression moved from professional interest to undisguised admiration as he grasped the full scope of what I proposed. Mrs. Mitchell, he said finally, your husband said you would surprise me with your strategic thinking. He was right. My husband, I replied, was right about a great many things, including, it seemed, his belief in my ability to not just survive his death, but to emerge stronger from the crucible of grief and betrayal. The Mitchell brothers arrived at Maple Creek Farm exactly when I expected. It was 10 a.m. sharp, 3 days after I met with Jenna. Their black SUV crunched up the gravel driveway with the confidence of men who believed victory was merely a formality. Behind them followed a silver Mercedes I didn't recognize. It likely carried their attorney or a financial advisor. I watched from the great room window. I was dressed not in the casual clothes they had seen me in previously, but in a tailored suit I had purchased specifically for this meeting. Appearances matter when you're staging a coup. I intended to present myself not as a grieving widow, but as the formidable opponent Joshua had always known me to be. They're here, I called to Jenna. She emerged from the kitchen, looking equally professional in a dark blue dress. Her father's watch, one of his most treasured possessions, was displayed prominently on her wrist. Ready? She asked. Nervousness and determination were at war in her expression. Completely, I said, squeezing her hand. Remember, let them talk themselves into a corner first. Alice appeared from the back of the house. The others have arrived through the service entrance. They're set up in the dining room as you requested. I nodded my appreciation. Perfect timing. The doorbell rang. Alice moved to answer it with the practiced deference of a caretaker who knew his role in this carefully choreographed performance. Good morning, gentlemen. I heard him greet them. Mrs. Mitchell and Miss Jenna are expecting you. This way, please. They entered with the easy entitlement of men accustomed to controlling rooms. Robert led, followed by Alan, who carried his ever-present legal portfolio, and David brought up the rear. Behind them walked a silver-haired man in an expensive suit who radiated corporate authority. "Catherine," Robert nodded, his smile not reaching his eyes. "We appreciate you agreeing to this meeting. This is Harrison Wells, CEO of Northern Extraction. We thought it might be productive to have an industry expert join our discussion about the property's potential." So, they had brought an oil executive to intimidate me with technical jargon and market valuations. "Predictable. How thoughtful," I replied pleasantly. "I've had the dining room prepared for our meeting. Shall we?" I led them through the house, noting their assessing glances at the renovations Joshua had completed. In the formal dining room, a large table had been set with documents at each place, water carafes and coffee service. It was the picture of professional preparation. "Please sit," I gestured. "I believe we have much to discuss." As they settled into their chairs, their expressions of confidence still firmly in place, I remained standing at the head of the table. "Before we begin," I said, "I want to thank you for your previous proposal. It was educational." Robert's smile widened. He clearly interpreted my comment as a submission. "We're pleased you've had time to consider our offer. With Mr. Wells's expertise, we can discuss the most advantageous arrangement for dividing the property's assets." "Yes, division," I mused, picking up a remote control from the table. "That's precisely what I'd like to discuss." I pressed a button. A hidden screen descended from the ceiling at the far end of the room. The brothers exchanged surprised glances. Clearly, they hadn't expected this level of preparation. "If you'll direct your attention to the presentation," I continued, clicking the remote again. A detailed map of Maple Creek Farm appeared on the screen. It showed property boundaries, topographical features, and geological formations. "This is the complete survey of Maple Creek," I explained. "All 2,200 acres, not just the 800 eastern acres mentioned in your proposal." Alan shifted uncomfortably. "The western section is undevelopable rocky terrain. We excluded it for simplicity's sake." "How considerate," I smiled. "Except for one small detail." Another click. The map overlaid with the oil deposit locations from Joshua's war room. The massive reserve beneath the worthless western acres was now clearly visible. Harrison Wells straightened in his chair. His professional mask slipped as he leaned forward to study the projection with sudden, intense interest. "As you can see," I continued calmly, "the primary oil deposit extends predominantly beneath the western section, the very acres you so generously offered to exclude from our fair division." Robert's face flushed. "These surveys are unreliable. Northern Extraction's analysis indicates—" Actually, a new voice interrupted as the connecting door opened. "Those surveys have been verified by 3 independent geological teams." The Mitchell brothers turned in shock as Thomas Reeves, the CEO of Western Plains Energy, Northern Extraction's primary competitor, entered the room. He was followed by my attorney and 2 other individuals in business attire. "What is this?" Robert demanded, half rising from his chair. "This," I said pleasantly, "is a meeting about the true value and future of Maple Creek Farm. Mr. Reeves has expressed significant interest in the property's potential, particularly after reviewing the complete geological data my husband compiled." Harrison Wells shot a betrayed glance at the Mitchell brothers. "You told me you had exclusive negotiating rights to this property." "They don't," my attorney interjected smoothly, placing additional documents on the table. "Mrs. Mitchell holds clear, uncontested title to the entire property, including all mineral rights. The documents you've been shown by the Mitchell brothers have no legal standing whatsoever." Robert slammed his hand on the table. "This property has been in the Mitchell family for generations. Joshua had a moral obligation." "Moral obligations?" Jenna spoke for the first time. Her voice was steady despite her white-knuckled grip on her water glass. "Like the moral obligation you had to my father when you stole his inheritance? Or forged his signature on loan documents? Or threatened to implicate him in your own financial crimes if he exposed you?" The brothers froze. The color drained from their faces. "What exactly is she talking about?" Harrison Wells asked, looking increasingly uncomfortable. "Perhaps these will clarify matters," I said, nodding to my attorney. He distributed sealed envelopes to everyone at the table. "Copies of documentation my husband preserved regarding certain historical transactions involving Mitchell family assets. I believe the statute of limitations has expired on some of these matters, but the Canadian financial regulatory authorities might still find others quite interesting." Alan opened his envelope, scanning the contents with increasing alarm. "These are private family matters," he sputtered, completely irrelevant to the current discussion. On the contrary, I countered, finally taking my seat at the head of the table. They establish a pattern of fraudulent behavior that directly impacts your credibility in these negotiations. Behavior that continued when you deliberately misled Mr. Wells about your standing to negotiate for this property. The room fell silent as the Mitchell brothers realized the completeness of their exposure. Joshua had documented everything: their historical crimes against him, their recent manipulations, their attempts to seize valuable assets while appearing generous. "What do you want?" Robert finally asked, his confident facade completely crumbled. "I want you to leave Maple Creek Farm and never return," I stated simply. "I want you to cease all attempts to contest my ownership or manipulate my daughter. In exchange, these documents will remain private, viewable only by the people in this room." Harrison Wells stood abruptly. "I believe my company's involvement in this matter has been based on incomplete and potentially fraudulent information. If you'll excuse me, Mrs. Mitchell, I'll be in touch with you directly regarding any future discussions of mineral rights." He shot a disgusted look at the brothers before exiting. Robert's expression hardened as he watched his oil company ally depart. "You have no idea what you're doing, Catherine. The extraction costs for the western section are prohibitive. The logistics alone." "Actually," Thomas Reeves interjected, "Western Plains has developed new extraction technology specifically suited to these geological formations. We're prepared to make Mrs. Mitchell an offer that acknowledges both the challenges and the exceptional potential of this property." As the meeting continued, transforming from the Mitchell brothers' planned takeover into my carefully orchestrated counteroffensive, I caught Jenna's eye across the table. Her slight smile conveyed everything: pride, vindication, and the bittersweet acknowledgement that Joshua had prepared us for this moment, even from beyond the grave. By the time the Mitchell brothers departed 2 hours later, defeated, exposed, and legally bound by the settlement agreement my attorney had prepared in advance, the future of Maple Creek Farm had been secured. It was precisely as Joshua had envisioned, and not divided among greedy relatives, nor sold to the highest bidder, but preserved as a legacy for the family he had chosen and loved, Jenna and me. As their vehicles disappeared down the driveway, Alice appeared at my side. "Your husband would be proud," he said quietly. "You outmaneuvered them exactly as he believed you would." I watched the dust settle on the driveway. A strange mix of emotions washed through me: triumph tinged with grief, strength emerging from vulnerability. "We're not finished yet," I replied, thinking of the videos still waiting on Joshua's laptop, the future stretching out before us. This was just the first battle, but it was a battle we had decisively won, using the weapons Joshua had meticulously prepared and the strength he had always seen in me, even when I couldn't see it in myself. The weeks following the Mitchell brothers' defeat were a blur of practical matters. There were legal documents to finalize the settlement agreement, meetings with Western Plains Energy to structure a mutually beneficial extraction arrangement, and a careful inventory of everything Joshua had created at Maple Creek Farm. Jenna stayed with me through it all. Her initial resentment about her father's secrets had transformed into a deep appreciation for his foresight. We established a routine of watching his daily videos together each morning. We both found comfort and guidance in his posthumous presence. "Did you have any idea?" Jenna asked one evening. We were sitting on the porch, watching the sun set behind the western hills that contained our newfound wealth. "Any suspicion at all that Dad was sick or planning all this?" I considered the question carefully, searching my memories for missed signals. "There were small things," I said, "things that make sense in retrospect. His insistence on updating our wills 3 years ago. The way he'd sometimes look at us at dinner, almost as if he were memorizing our faces. His sudden interest in taking photos of ordinary moments. I thought he was just going through a midlife appreciation phase," Jenna said, smiling sadly. "In a way he was, just not for the reasons we assumed." I sipped my tea. "The biggest change was how he stopped putting things off. Your father was always a someday person about personal matters. Someday we'd take that trip to Europe. Someday he'd learn to sail. Someday we'd renovate the kitchen." Then suddenly he started doing things rather than just talking about them. "Like buying this place," Jenna nodded. "Creating something lasting." "Exactly." I shook my head, still coming to terms with the magnitude of what he had concealed. I never imagined he was racing against time, creating a legacy because he knew he wouldn't be here to see it mature. The Western Plains Energy representatives were shocked when I outlined my conditions for their access to the oil beneath our property. Rather than selling the mineral rights outright for a lump sum as most landowners did, I had insisted on a structured arrangement. It prioritized environmental protection, employed sustainable extraction methods, and established a substantial trust for land restoration after the oil was depleted. "Mrs. Mitchell," their lead negotiator had said. These terms are highly unusual in the industry. Then perhaps the industry needs more unusual terms, I had replied, channeling Joshua's quiet confidence. The oil has been there for millions of years. It can stay there until we agree on responsible methods to retrieve it. To my surprise, Thomas Reeves, the CEO, had been intrigued rather than deterred by my approach. Your husband mentioned you were an environmental science major before switching to literature, he had noted. He said you'd insist on doing this right, not just profitably. Another piece of Joshua's planning was revealed. He had clearly been in communication with select industry leaders, laying the groundwork for negotiations he knew would follow his death. 1 month after claiming my inheritance, I stood in the art studio Joshua had created for me. Sunlight streamed through the north-facing windows, illuminating a blank canvas on the easel. After decades away from painting, I had finally picked up a brush again. It was hesitant at first, then with growing confidence. Today's subject waited patiently in the paddock visible through the studio windows. Midnight, the magnificent Frisian stallion Joshua had purchased because he reminded him of a painting I had admired 20 years earlier. Alice had been teaching me to ride again. My middle-aged body initially protested, but then it adapted to the forgotten rhythms of horsemanship. Mom. Jenna appeared in the doorway, laptop in hand. Today's video is different. I think you should see this one alone. I set down my paintbrush, curious. We had fallen into the routine of watching Joshua's daily messages together over breakfast. It was a shared experience that brought us both comfort. Different how? It's marked specifically for month 2, day 15. He titled it, When Catherine Starts Painting Again. She handed me the computer with a gentle smile. He knew you would, eventually. Alone in the studio, surrounded by the tools of a passion I was rediscovering, I opened the laptop and pressed play. Joshua appeared. He was seated in this very room before any of the art supplies had been installed. The space was bare except for the magnificent windows. Hello, my love, he began, his smile warm and intimate. If you're watching this, you found your way back to your art, back to the passion you set aside for our family all those years ago. I gently touched the screen, tears welling up in my eyes. I've been thinking a lot about legacy, he continued. What we leave behind, what marks we make on the world. Most people think of legacy in terms of children or wealth or accomplishments, but there's another kind of legacy, the enabling of possibility in those we love. He gestured to the empty room around him. This space isn't finished yet, but in my mind I can see it completed, filled with light and color and your creations. I imagine you standing before an easel, brush in hand, finally giving form to the visions you've carried inside you all these years. I glanced at the half-finished portrait of Midnight on my easel. I was struck by how closely it aligned with Joshua's imagination. I've structured everything to give you freedom, Kat, he continued. Financial security through the oil rights, protection from my brother's interference. A beautiful space for you to create, but what you do with that freedom, that's your legacy to build, not mine to dictate. He leaned closer to the camera, his expression intense. The farm, the horses, the art studio, they're not the inheritance. They're just the tools. The real inheritance is possibility, the chance to become more fully yourself without constraint. I paused the video, overwhelmed by the depth of his understanding. Joshua had known me better than I knew myself. He had seen the dormant artist still alive within the practical teacher and devoted mother I had become. When I resumed the video, his expression had softened again. I have one request, though it's yours to accept or decline. In the storage closet behind this room is a large canvas I commissioned before my diagnosis. It's blank, waiting. When you're ready, truly ready, I hope you'll create something for it. Something that captures not just what you see but what you feel about this place that brought me back to my beginnings and that will carry you into your future. The video ended with his familiar sign-off. Until tomorrow, my love. I sat motionless for several minutes, processing his words. Then, moved by an impulse, I went to the storage closet. I found exactly what he had described, an enormous, blank canvas, custom-built for the prominent wall in the great room. It was the perfect size to create a statement piece, a focal point for the heart of the home Joshua had made. Over the following weeks, as autumn painted the landscape in brilliant hues, I sketched countless drafts. I wanted to capture the essence of Maple Creek Farm and what it represented. None of them satisfied me. Until one morning, I was watching Jenna riding Midnight across the eastern meadow, and something clicked. The painting took shape gradually. It was not a traditional landscape. It was a blending of real and metaphorical elements. The farm as it existed now was in the background, rendered with photographic precision. In the foreground, I painted a series of translucent layers, showing what had come before. The abandoned property Joshua had purchased, the family farm of his childhood. and beneath it all, the ancient land that had witnessed generations come and go. Threading through these temporal layers were two riders on horseback, a man and a woman. Their features were indistinct enough to represent both specific and universal journeys. And behind them, barely visible unless you knew to look, was a third figure, a young woman forging her own path forward. When the painting was finally complete, Alice helped me hang it in its designated place in the great room. Jenna stood back, studying it with tears in her eyes. "It's him, isn't it? And me." She traced the paths of the riders with her finger. "The past, present, and future of this place." "Legacy," I said. "Not what's left behind, but what continues forward." That evening, as I watched the sunset from the porch of what was now truly my home, I felt Joshua's presence. It was not as a ghost or a memory, but as a continuing partnership. He had given me not just material security, but a framework for reinvention. The freedom to discover who Catherine Mitchell might become when unconstrained by circumstance. The oil would provide financial stability for generations to come. The farm would evolve according to our stewardship, and I would continue bringing beauty into the world through my newly rediscovered talents, creating my own legacy alongside the one Joshua had so carefully prepared. Tomorrow's video waited on the laptop inside. Another day of guidance and connection across the boundary that separated us. But increasingly I found myself looking forward rather than back. I was grateful for his foresight, but eager to write the following chapters of this unexpected story myself. The forbidden farm had become hallowed ground. It was no longer a place of secrets and pain as Joshua had once known it. It was a sanctuary of possibility, his final and most incredible gift to me. Winter descended on Maple Creek Farm with dramatic beauty. Pristine snowfall blanketed the rolling pastures. Ice crystals formed delicate patterns on the windows. Smoke curled from the stone chimney into the crisp Alberta sky. I had decided to stay through the season rather than return to Minnesota. I was drawn to experience the full cycle of seasons on this land that had become my unexpected home. Jenna had reluctantly returned to her life in Minneapolis. Her marketing firm was unwilling to extend her leave of absence indefinitely, but our daily video ritual continued via FaceTime. The three of us were still connected. Jenna in her urban apartment, me in the farmhouse living room, and Joshua's recorded presence, binding us across time and space. "The western hills are particularly beautiful after a fresh snow," Joshua remarked in today's video. It had been filmed exactly 1 year ago in this very room. "If Alice has kept up the maintenance on the snowmobile in the equipment barn, take it out to the ridge overlooking the valley. The view at sunrise is worth the early wake-up call." I smiled at his continuing ability to anticipate my experiences. Just yesterday, Alice had mentioned the snowmobile and offered to show me the winter trails Joshua had mapped out across the property. 6 months had passed since I had confronted the Mitchell brothers. True to our agreement, they had maintained their distance, though my attorney occasionally forwarded communications from their legal team. They were technical questions about property boundaries, as Western Plains Energy began its preliminary work on the eastern edge of the farm. The oil extraction project was proceeding with deliberate care. The company was honoring our unusual arrangement, which prioritized environmental protection over rapid profit. Thomas Reeves had become an unexpected ally. His initial business interest had evolved into a genuine respect for the sustainable approach Joshua had envisioned, and I had insisted upon. My phone rang, pulling me from these thoughts. Jenna's name flashed on the screen. "Everything okay?" I answered immediately, concerned by the unexpected call. Our daily video chat wasn't scheduled for several hours. "I'm not sure," she replied, her voice tense. "I just had a strange visit from Uncle David." My grip tightened on the phone. "David? What did he want?" "Officially, he came to apologize for his role in trying to manipulate me against you." She paused, but something felt off about the whole conversation. He kept asking subtle questions about the farm, whether I visited often, if I'd noticed any unusual activity around the property. "Did you tell him anything?" "Of course not." I kept my responses vague and non-committal. Her voice lowered. "Mom, I think they're planning something." This felt like reconnaissance. A chill that had nothing to do with the winter temperature ran through me. The Mitchell brothers had been suspiciously quiet over the past few months. Too quiet for men accustomed to fighting for what they wanted. "I'll alert Alice and increase security," I assured her, "and I'll have my attorney contact theirs with a reminder about the terms of our agreement." "There's something else," Jenna added hesitantly. "David mentioned that Robert has been ill, some heart condition requiring surgery." He tried to play on my sympathy, suggesting that family should come together in difficult times. The same heart condition that had taken Joshua, the genetic hypertrophic cardiomyopathy he had inherited from his father. I wondered if Robert had hidden his diagnosis from his brothers, just as Joshua had concealed his from us. Be careful, Jenna. This could be legitimate or it could be another manipulation tactic. That's what I thought, she sighed. I hate being suspicious of every interaction with Dad's family. It shouldn't be this way. After ending the call, I walked to the window overlooking the snow-covered driveway. Unease settled in my stomach. The Mitchell brothers had proven themselves ruthless and deceptive. Their apparent retreat might have been a strategic regrouping. I called Ellis immediately, relaying Jenna's concerns. His response was characteristically calm but resolute. I'll alert the security team and check the perimeter surveillance, he assured me. We installed those systems for exactly this kind of scenario. It was another of Joshua's precautions. Discreet but comprehensive security throughout the property, with cameras monitoring all access points and motion sensors covering the most vulnerable approaches. At the time I had thought it was excessive. Now I was grateful for his foresight. That evening I found myself drawn to the hidden bunker beneath the barn. I was seeking guidance from Joshua's meticulously organized records. If the Mitchell brothers were planning another attempt to claim Maple Creek Farm, perhaps he had anticipated this scenario as well. In the concrete room filled with filing cabinets and maps, I searched for any information related to continued threats after the settlement. In the bottom drawer of Joshua's desk, I found a folder labeled, "If They Return," in his precise handwriting. Inside was a detailed contingency plan. There were steps to take if his brothers violated the agreement, including pre-drafted legal injunctions and contact information for the Canadian authorities who had investigated their past financial dealings. And surprisingly, there was a sealed letter addressed to Robert Mitchell. A note in Joshua's handwriting was paper-clipped to the envelope, a last resort. Only deliver if necessary. What had my husband written to his estranged older brother that he considered so potentially powerful or damaging that it should only be used in extremis? The envelope was sealed. The contents were a final mystery Joshua had left for me to uncover, only if circumstances demanded it. I returned to the main house, the sealed letter secure in my pocket. My mind was turning over possibilities and strategies. Outside, a gentle snow began to fall again, adding another pristine layer to the winter landscape. The next morning, Alice knocked on my door as I was finishing breakfast. "We have visitors," he announced, his expression grave. "All 3 Mitchell brothers, plus 2 men I don't recognize. They're at the gate." He nodded. "They're requesting entry. Robert claims it's a personal family matter, not related to the property dispute." I moved to the great room window, which offered a view of the entrance gates in the distance. 2 vehicles waited there, the familiar black SUV and a more modest sedan. "What do you think they really want?" I asked Ellis. "Nothing good," he replied bluntly, "but refusing to see them might provoke whatever they're planning. It's better to control the encounter on our own terms." I considered this, my hand unconsciously reaching into my pocket. "Have security stay alert, but not visible. Let them approach the main house only. No access to the other buildings." As Ellis went to convey these instructions, I called my attorney to inform him of the unexpected visit. Then I called Jenna to warn her that her uncles had appeared at the farm, less than 24 hours after David's casual visit to her. "Do you want me to come?" she asked immediately. "I can be on the next flight." "No," I decided. "Stay where you are. This might be exactly what they want, to get both of us here isolated from our legal support system." Through the window, I watched the gates open, allowing the 2 vehicles to proceed up the long driveway. Steeling myself, I went to my bedroom to retrieve one additional item Joshua had left for precisely this type of confrontation: a small digital recorder disguised as a decorative brooch. Whatever the Mitchell brothers wanted, I intended to have a record of every word. When the doorbell rang, I was waiting in the great room. I was seated calmly in the armchair facing the entryway. The recorder was pinned to my sweater. The mysterious letter was secure in my pocket. Alice answered the door with professional courtesy, ushering in our unwelcome visitors. Robert entered first. He looked noticeably thinner than at our last encounter. His complexion was grayish beneath his tan. Alan and David followed, their expressions carefully neutral. The 2 strangers brought up the rear. One was carrying a medical bag, suggesting he was a physician. The other held a leather portfolio, similar to those favored by legal professionals. "Catherine," Robert nodded in greeting. His voice lacked its usual commanding tone. "Thank you for seeing us without an appointment. Family always seems to arrive unexpectedly," I replied mildly. "Please sit. Ellis, would you bring coffee for our guests?" As they arranged themselves on the sofas opposite my chair, I noted the tension in their postures. I saw the way Alan kept glancing at Robert with poorly concealed concern. Whatever had brought them here, it centered on the eldest Mitchell brother. "I'll be direct," Robert began once Ellis had departed for the kitchen. "I've been diagnosed with the same heart condition that took Joshua, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It runs in the family." So Jenna's information had been accurate. I maintained a neutral expression, waiting for him to continue. "My condition is advanced. The specialists give me 6 months without intervention, possibly years with the right treatment." He gestured to the man with the medical bag. "This is Dr. Harmon, my cardiologist, and Mr. Pearson, my personal attorney. I'm sorry to hear about your health challenges," I said carefully, "but I'm not clear on why this brings you to Maple Creek Farm." Robert exchanged glances with his brothers before continuing. "I need a heart transplant, Catherine, but there's a complication. Our family has a rare blood type and tissue markers that make finding a compatible donor extremely difficult." A creeping suspicion began to form in my mind. That sounds challenging, but again, why come to me with this? Dr. Harmon interjected professionally. "Based on the medical records we've reviewed, your late husband would have been a perfect donor match for Robert, and given the genetic factors involved, there's a significant probability that your daughter might be compatible as well." The audacity of their request hit me like a physical blow. They wanted to test Jenna. They tried to use my daughter's body as a potential source of salvation for the man who had tried to steal her inheritance and turn her against me. "You want my daughter to be tested as a potential donor for you," I clarified, making sure the recorder captured every word of this extraordinary conversation. "Just preliminary blood work to check for compatibility," Alan jumped in smoothly. "Nothing invasive at this stage." "And if she matches?" I pressed. "What then?" "Then we would hope she might consider becoming a living donor," Robert replied. "The procedure allows for a partial liver transplantation with minimal risk to the donor. Her liver would regenerate completely within months." I sat in stunned silence. I marveled at their breathtaking entitlement. After attempting to manipulate, deceive, and defraud us, they now expected my daughter to undergo major surgery for a man she barely knew, a man who had tried to turn her against her own mother. "Let me understand correctly," I said finally, my voice steady despite my internal turmoil. "You tried to steal this property from me, attempted to turn my daughter against me with lies and half-truths, and now you're here asking if she'll undergo surgery to save your life?" Robert at least had the grace to look uncomfortable. "I understand how this appears, but we're still family, Catherine. Blood connects us whether we choose it or not." "Blood," I repeated thoughtfully. I remembered Joshua's videos, his painful history with these men, his determination to protect Jenna and me from their toxic influence. "You're right about one thing, Robert. Blood does connect us, but not in the way you think." I withdrew the sealed letter from my pocket. I noted the flash of recognition in Robert's eyes. "Joshua left this for you," I said, holding it just out of his reach, "with instructions to deliver it only if absolutely necessary. I believe this qualifies." Robert stared at the sealed envelope in my hand. Recognition and apprehension flickered across his drawn features. "Joshua wrote to me?" "Apparently he anticipated that even a legal settlement wouldn't keep you away permanently," I said, my voice cool. I held the letter, making no move to hand it over yet. "He prepared for every contingency, including this one." An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Dr. Harmon shifted awkwardly. He was clearly sensing he had been brought into something far more complex than a straightforward medical consultation. The Mitchell brothers exchanged glances, some unspoken communication passing between them. "Before I give you this," I continued, "I want absolute clarity about what you're asking. You want my daughter, the same young woman you manipulated and lied to 6 months ago, to undergo medical testing and potentially major surgery to save your life." "It sounds callous when you phrase it that way," Alan interjected. "But yes, essentially, Robert's condition is grave, and family members provide the best chance for a compatible donation." "Why not David or Alan?" I asked, looking at the other two brothers. "Siblings are typically even better matches than nieces." Dr. Harmon cleared his throat. "We've tested both of Mr. Mitchell's brothers. Neither is compatible, due to some unusual genetic factors." "And there are no other siblings?" I pressed, overseeing their reactions. "No other family members who might be suitable donors?" Another significant glance passed between the brothers. David looked away, suddenly fascinated by the view through the window. "No," Robert replied firmly. "No other siblings." I nodded slowly, then handed Joshua's letter to him. "I think you should read this before we continue this conversation." With slightly trembling hands, Robert broke the seal. He unfolded the pages inside. His eyes moved across the first few lines, then widened in shock. The color drained from his face as he continued reading. the pages shaking visibly in his grasp. Alan leaned forward. "Robert, what is it?" But Robert didn't respond. He was utterly absorbed in Joshua's words. When he finally looked up, his expression had transformed. The confident businessman was gone. In his place was a man confronting ghosts he had thought were long buried. "How long have you known?" he asked me hoarsely. "I only know that Joshua left this for you, with instructions that it contained information you might need someday." I met his gaze steadily. "What exactly did my husband write?" Robert handed the letter to Alan, who began reading with David looking over his shoulder. Their expressions shifted in near unison, from curiosity to disbelief, and then to something approaching horror. "This can't be true," Alan said finally, looking at Robert. "Father would have told us." "Would he?" Robert laughed bitterly. "The same father who pitted us against each other our entire lives? Who played favorites depending on his mood? Who took pleasure in holding secrets over our heads?" I watched this exchange with growing curiosity. Whatever Joshua had revealed in that letter had clearly shaken the brothers to their core. "Perhaps," I suggested quietly, "someone should tell me what my husband wrote." Robert seemed to remember my presence. His gaze refocused on me with a new awareness. "Joshua wasn't our half-brother. He was our full brother." This made no sense. "I don't understand. Joshua told me your father remarried after your mother died giving birth to him. That's why there was such an age gap between you." "That was the story we all believed," Robert confirmed. "But according to this letter, Joshua discovered the truth while he was researching his heart condition. Our mother didn't die in childbirth. She left our father when Joshua was an infant. She was unable to tolerate his abusive behavior any longer. Father created the story about her death to avoid the scandal of abandonment, and to punish her by erasing her completely. But that's not all," Alan continued, his legal precision reasserting itself even through his shock. "Joshua discovered that our father had another family, a relationship that began before our mother left and continued for decades after. A woman in Saskatoon with whom he had 2 more children. Now I understand the significance. 2 more Mitchell siblings," Robert confirmed, scanning the letter again. "A brother and a sister, both in their 40s now, both sharing our rare blood type and genetic markers, according to medical records Joshua somehow obtained, and likely unaware of their connection to you." I surmised, the pieces falling into place. "Joshua found them, but he didn't contact them, did he?" "He simply confirmed their existence and their medical compatibility." Robert nodded slowly. "According to this, he even had their contact information verified annually through a private investigator, ensuring it remained current. In case," I finished for him, "in case one of you ever needed what you're asking of Jenna now, a compatible donor from a family you never even acknowledged." The irony was breathtaking. The Mitchell brothers had come to ask my daughter, the niece they had tried to manipulate and defraud, for a potentially life-saving organ donation. At the same time, completely unknown siblings may exist who could provide the exact medical match. "There's more," David said quietly, having taken the letter from Alan. "Joshua writes that he only discovered all this after his own diagnosis. He was already planning Maple Creek Farm for you, Catherine. But learning about these other siblings solidified his resolve to break completely from the Mitchell family legacy of secrets and manipulation. He writes that he wanted to create something honest and transparent to leave behind, something built on love rather than obligation." Tears pricked at my eyes as I recognized my husband's values in those words. Even from beyond the grave, he continues to teach us all about integrity and truth. "So," I said finally, "it seems you have alternatives to approaching my daughter. 2 half-siblings who share your medical markers." "Strangers," Robert protested weakly. "We don't even know these people. And whose fault is that?" I countered. "Your father chose to keep them secret. You and your brothers chose to treat Joshua as less worthy than yourselves. Now you face the consequences of those choices." Dr. Harmon cleared his throat again. "Forgive me, but from a medical perspective, any potential donor should be contacted quickly. Mr. Mitchell's condition is deteriorating rapidly." I considered the man before me, Robert Mitchell. Once powerful and intimidating, he is now diminished by illness and the collapse of his family's mythology. Despite everything he had done, I couldn't find any satisfaction in his suffering. "Joshua wouldn't have wanted that." "The contact information for your half-siblings," I said. "Is it included in the letter?" Robert nodded mutely. "Then I suggest you begin there," I told him. "Not with demands but with humility and truth. Tell them who you are, explain your medical situation, and give them the choice that should be theirs to make, just as such a choice would be Jenna's alone, not mine, not yours. if you had approached her with honesty from the beginning. And if they refuse? Alan asked. Then Jenna can decide for herself if she wishes to be tested, I replied. But she'll make that decision with complete knowledge of all the facts and all the alternatives. No manipulation, no pressure, no lies. The Mitchell brothers absorbed this in silence. The family resemblance between them and my late husband was suddenly more apparent in their chastened expressions. Joshua had had the same strong jawline and the same deep-set eyes, features I now noticed with new clarity. "We'll go," Robert said finally, rising with effort from the sofa. "Thank you for this." He gestured to the letter, which David carefully folded and returned to the envelope. As Alice showed them out, I remained seated, processing the unexpected revelation and its implications. Joshua had known he had other siblings, family members who might have welcomed him, who shared his biological heritage. Yet he had chosen to keep that knowledge in reserve, using it only as a form of protection for Jenna and me after he was gone. That evening, as snow fell gently outside the windows of Maple Creek Farm, I opened my laptop to watch the day's video from Joshua. His familiar face appeared on the screen. It had been recorded exactly a year ago in this very room. "Hello, my love," he began, his smile warming me across time. "If I've calculated correctly, today might be the day my brothers finally play their medical card. They've known about my condition for years. Our father made sure to inform them when I was first diagnosed as a teenager, though they never offered any help then." I gasped softly, once again astonished by his foresight. "If they've approached you or Jenna about donation compatibility, then you've given them the letter about our other siblings." His expression grew thoughtful. "I considered contacting them myself many times over the years, but their lives were established. Their family was complete. I questioned my right to disrupt that with ancient history and biological connections that might mean nothing to them." He leaned closer to the camera. "The truth is, Cat, family isn't about blood. It's about choice. I chose you and Jenna as my family. I hope whoever Robert and the others approach will be allowed the same freedom of choice, to help or not, to connect or not, without manipulation or obligation." As the video continued, with Joshua sharing his thoughts on family and legacy with his characteristic thoughtfulness, I felt a sense of completion settling over me. The Mitchell brothers had come seeking to use Jenna as a means to an end, just as they had always used Joshua. Instead, they had been forced to confront the tangled web of secrets their father had woven, and the consequences of their own choices. Whether they would reach out to their newly discovered siblings with genuine openness or with the same manipulative tactics they had always employed remained to be seen. But that was no longer my concern, or Joshua's, or Jenna's. We had broken free of the toxic dynamics of the Mitchell family. We were claiming our own legacy through Maple Creek Farm and the life we were building here. Joshua had transformed his childhood prison into my sanctuary, his painful past into my promising future. The forbidden farm had become hallowed ground indeed. Not because of the oil beneath its soil or the financial security it provided, but because it represented Joshua's final triumph over the family that had rejected him, and the lasting love that had sustained him. Spring would come again to Maple Creek Farm. The horses would run in green pastures. The oil would be carefully extracted from the western hills, and I would continue to create art in the studio my husband had designed. Jenna would visit when she could, perhaps bringing her own children someday to ride horses and explore the land her grandfather had reclaimed. And Joshua would remain present in the legacy he had so carefully crafted, not just in the daily videos that would eventually end, but in every corner of this place that reflected his love, his foresight, and his determination that the mistakes of the past would not dictate the shape of the future. The forbidden had become the cherished. The secret had become celebrated. And I, Catherine Mitchell, had become the caretaker of a legacy built not on obligation or blood, but on the purest foundation of all, love freely given and gratefully received. "Until tomorrow, my love," Joshua said as the day's video concluded. "Until tomorrow," I whispered back, knowing that while tomorrow would bring a new video and a new message from the past, it would also get me one day closer to the future I was now creating. A future inspired by his example but shaped by my own emerging strength. The legacy of Maple Creek Farm continued, no longer forbidden but forever transformed.